Welcome to FinTech Corner. I'm Joseph Drambarian, and I'm your host. And I'm joined by McKenzie Knudson. Did I get that right?
You got that right.
Awesome.
Yes.
I'm so glad. I was nervous. And we're here live at AFP 2023. And I'm excited about today's conversation. We're going to talk a little bit about your experience at Sealaska and how it's been going, not just with Travada, but what it's been like transitioning from what it sounds like was a pretty manual lifestyle, managing the cash and liquidity, and what it's like today. And I thought that before we dig into that, it'd be really great to learn just a little bit more about you and your role and how you find yourself here.
All right. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. This is quite the event that's going on around us. So, my name is McKenzie Knudson. I work for Sealaska Corporation. I've been in Treasury or my Treasury function for about 2 years now. I'm a former accountant, so I've been in accounting for
Love that.
the rest of my career. So I feel like having an accounting background and pulling that into Treasury has been really helpful. And I've been at Sealaska for 10 years, but most recently for 4. So I came back and have been with Sealaska for 4 and am working with my supervisor, Mary, to create the Treasury function. We're starting from square one.
Yeah.
So we had no Treasury role or function working at Sealaska. So that's been our main goal. And Travada is kind of our step one.
Amazing. By the way, I love the accounting background. I actually come from a family of accountants. My brother is an accountant. My mom, she started as an accountant, as a CFO today. And I just love that background because it's a more tactical background when you look at cash. Mm-hmm. And I feel like you bring a different perspective just naturally coming from that background. And I guess to transition to that, what was life like prior to having automation with a platform like Travada? Was it all pretty manual?
We were all manual. So we had a spreadsheet that we would take and roll forward every month, and we'd update it daily with cash balances. So we would log into our various portals, put in the new cash balance, and then we would manually, look for any decreases in cash or known one-offs to try to project where we'd be. But we were only looking at it for maybe the next week or month. We weren't looking out into the future. And we also were only looking at it at our top corporate level where we own about 30 subsidiaries. So we weren't,
Right.
We were letting them all they managed their own cash. So we're trying to now be more like of a consolidated, aggregated view of Treasury at Sealaska. And so Excel wasn't working.
Absolutely. And we've been, on this journey at Travada for, over 5 years now. And when we first started, Excel, we like to think of Excel as our main competitor, if you will. Not really. We love Excel. How could you not love Excel? It gives you so much freedom. But the problem is, with that freedom, you also have to own everything. You have to be the database. You have to be the API connection, right? Going to the banks and getting the data yourself. And I'm curious, as you went through the journey of discovering a tool like Travada, but then also having to learn more about, well, how do you get data into a system like Travada? What was the experience learning about APIs like? And do you feel like that is a continuous journey? And what are some of the benefits that you've learned about?
Yeah. Well, let me give I just came from a session on cash forecasting where we did a poll, and there was 220 plus people in the room, and 71% are still cash forecasting on Excel.
Yeah.
So I just think that Excel is always, our best friend, and it's hard to pry people away from it. So ours was a pretty easy transition partnering with Travada and getting the bank connections established. And so once we had that and showed, and then when you have the data, once you have that data, you can actually focus on analyzing it and using it versus just compiling it so that eventually then you'll take a look at what's going on. And then we were able to show our other subsidiaries in accounting how they can use it too. So now it was a pretty easy transition for us in terms of getting people to disregard the old Excel spreadsheet.
Right.
just one day I quit rolling it forward and nobody asked for it. And I directed them to Travada because we had it set up. And
Great success.
so the APIs feel magical. You know, they can, we just can look at our balances every day, and there's a little bit of knowing which banks are connected, you know, current day versus previous day, but
Right.
that's a learning curve.
I think that the word magical is interesting because the best technology is always described in that way. If you think about your iPhone or your Android device and you interact with Google or you interact with Apple's Siri or any of these technologies where you just wonder, how did it do that? How was it able to take all this complexity, organize it, and then give me something actionable? I think that is something that we strive for, obviously, at Travada. And one of the things that I'm curious about is, as you were onboarding and you went through the journey of learning about the platform, learning about things that you could do, what has that looked like? Because I think one of the things that we have found, especially walking the floor here at AFP, learning about other solutions, seeing how other people are thinking about it, it seems like there are diverse opinions on how the customer implementation, if you will, should go. Where Travada, we have this stance that it'd be really great if the customer could self-service as much as possible, feel like they're in control of the whole process. The other side of the house is, well, we could have a team of consultants, right, that play the role of learning how to do all of the various things that you might want to execute on as a team, and then they're responsible for training your team and all of that. I wonder, where do you stand on kind of that continuum, if you will, if the bleeding edge is you do it all yourself and you are equipped to do that, and then the other side of the house is, you rely on a team of experts from outside of your organization?
Yeah, going through, implementations mostly on the ERP side.
Yeah.
Usually you hire consultants and you lean on them a lot. With the Travada implementation, the nice part was the system is so flexible that we didn't feel tied into decisions we had made that we couldn't undo, because of working with the Travada team, mostly David, he's here. So we've been catching up.
Shout out, David.
Yeah. So I'd say we were somewhere in the happy medium where we did most of like the setup heavily using Travada's help, and we didn't have any consultants. So it was nice in terms of we knew how the setup, how we wanted it to be, but we leaned on Travada to get us there. And then if we didn't like our end results, the nice part was it's flexible enough we were able to, just change our strategy and set things up differently, because we have the subsidiary structures are set up into different divisions, and so sometimes companies move divisions, and the tagging was flexible, searching transactions is flexible, but being able to do it ourselves with Travada doing all the heavy lifting, it felt like all the, that we connected with the banks via Travada, and we didn't need IT, which is huge. So that was
it's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's one thing that we, from the beginning, when I first approached this industry, I come from consumer side, and it's interesting because on the consumer side of the house, there's no such thing as IT. Right? IT is, someone in your family that decides to play that role. But ultimately, when you download an app on your, mobile device, or if you use any website, you just use it. And the expectation is you figure it out. On this side of the house, especially on the corporate side, it seems that you can't get anything done without having IT involved to install something, to secure it, wherever it might be. So the phrase "no IT involved," it's almost as if it's an unbelievable phrase. Like you have to doubt it. The first instinct is to doubt it. But I truly think that that's where we see a lot of the innovation coming, is that self-service, the ability to be in control ultimately of, if you add another bank,
Right.
No problem, right? It's not a arduous process where you have to involve other stakeholders and explain to them what's going on, and they have to then implement whatever it is that you would like, and then you have to play a project management role to execute it. And I'm curious, does that change the way that you behave moving forward, having that kind of freedom and flexibility?
I definitely think so. We've been a lot more, um, I guess, looking for ways we can optimize regardless of what bank we're using, because it feels a little like we're bank agnostic now that we have Truvada. There is the lift in terms of, connecting your payment straight to a bank. That's never fun because you
Right.
do need IT for that. But um, in terms of being able to optimize our current treasury setup and giving people data that they didn't have and then so we can see it in like a normalized way, it's been a huge lift, or not lift, like insight of data that we never had. Instead
Yeah.
of doing all of this data gathering, we're accessing it all in Truvada, and it's been great for even our accounting teams. Now that they see what's in there, they're creating reports. So it's less of trying to get people on board for a change and more of just showing them how to use the system. And it's been pretty self-explanatory once people click around that
Right.
they're off and running, and learning how, instead of manually creating ZBA journal entries at the end of every month, they're
Yeah.
downloading their info out of Truvada, and there's a lot less manual error in that type of process than.
Absolutely. I wonder, so you mentioned that search has been an area where you guys have been taking advantage of that, and it's obviously involved in reporting and all of that. One thing that we think a lot about is the transition from a world in Excel where obviously VLOOKUP is such a powerful tool and it's such a, cornerstone of everything that you do in Excel. The transition then from that, which is a precision thing and a filtering tool, to Travada's search, which is an open-ended tool. It's a tool that, you can obviously whittle down sets of transactions if you wanted to, but it also allows for you to do complex things like layer tags one on top of another and have absolutely no limitation when it comes to that. Has there been any, I don't know, learning curve or limitation in terms of your approach to how search could play a role in not just building the basic cash flows, but expanding the universe, if you will, to even more smaller microcosms of cash flow and how that might garner insight?
uh, I No, well, it depends. So all of our subs have been doing this in different ways, and so um, showing them the abilities of the search tool and how they can, like, refine their searches to get exactly what data they want, because we've been working with them to set up their own tags so they know how to use their tagging structure to get the data. But instead of pulling it into Excel, which what they were probably doing before, and VLOOKUPs or filtering, it seems like we're able to pull kind of, just add in not this and or that,
Right.
using the new tool has been, because I probably use it the most. I get asked questions all the time that are just off the wall. So ad hoc questions,
Right.
I can answer them so much faster than in less than an hour when I work it into my schedule versus,
Yeah.
I'll get it to you this week, so being able to answer on the fly questions has been a huge improvement from that type of search ability versus having all the data, but trying to whittle it down manually to get what you're looking for.
Right.
Yeah.
Speaking of having to answer on the fly questions all the time, kind of being pinged left and right, we launched Travada AI in June, and it was an accomplishment for sure, because we felt like it was years in the making. It took a long time to develop a platform that can do open-ended things in a way that AI, obviously, it can answer any question. One thing, though, has been a curiosity ever since we launched it, is how would end users behave, right? How would they, first of all, perceive this technology? And is it scary? Is it something that you imagine incorporating into your daily routine? And I guess if that's the first question, is what is the outlook on it? The second question, the follow-up, is do you trust it? Especially for these types of use cases. My boss just asked me some question that I know it'll take me an hour, to put it together, maybe through a couple of searches and a report. maybe if I just ask Travada AI, will it come up with the shortcut to that answer? And I'm curious, how do you see this? How do you see the progression of generative AI in relation to finance?
Yeah, I have high hopes for the ability of it. I have some not hesitations, but where there's so much training and learning to be had to feel confident about the data. So
Yeah,
I think, like anything, I'm going to be trying it out, reviewing what it gives me,
of course.
and learning from there, and along with my coworkers as we learn how to use it. Which I've sat in on a couple sessions this week so far about AI, and it just seems like everyone's talking about it. So we got to figure out how we can use it, and I'm happy that we'll have Travada to lean on for this help on how we can use the data that's all in Travada, because we have a few years worth of data in there now. So it'll be really nice to learn how to write I know you have to be very descriptive, so be able to write that descriptive question and get what I'm looking for, because like I said, I have high hopes for it.
There have been so many challenges to just get used to this new way of thinking. Believe it or not, even for myself, transitioning from this search mindset that has just been ingrained, right? From the first time that I used Google decades ago, and having that as just repeat behavior. I know how to write good Google searches that will just get me what I'm looking for. Transitioning now to a new world where that prompt engineering, if you will, just crafting the right phrases that will direct and steer these AI algorithms is so interesting. And if I can share a little bit about what we've been seeing, watching customers kind of start with the basics of, can you just find a transaction for me? Almost like a needle in the haystack. I know what I'm looking for. It's this type of transaction. Just go find it. To then the most complex question that I've ever seen is, can you provide me a derivative hedging strategy for my euro accounts? And it's like, what? You're going to trust that's the system to come up with that? And obviously there's a range of mastery from the most basic of, let's find this thing, to open-ended, come up with a fully fledged solution, a strategy that is multi-step. I think that everyone can play somewhere in the middle of there. And some of the most fascinating use cases that I've seen have been ones that are conversational. You start with a question, and then you just kind of keep digging. You go further and further down the rabbit hole until you get to a conclusion of some kind. I'm curious, where do you see your team and kind of your use of this technology going forward? Do you think that there will ever be a world where an assistant like this can almost play a role on your team, almost be part of the team?
Yeah, I think for sure it's going to be one of those crawl, walk, runs situations in terms of teaching the team, teaching, all of us. I don't know if we have anyone in-house who's all that familiar with how to use it, what it could do for us. So, then, but once we figure that out, conceptualizing, to me, I see it with the cash forecasting. Right now, one of the big struggles is building cash forecasts at our subsidiary levels for companies who, they're all different. They all have different inflows and outflows and business trends, helping us maybe create like our base forecasts, and then seeing, using Travada to really narrow it down and getting a better pulse on, instead of looking at things, we have a pretty wide range of what we think is okay in terms of being on the forecast. I think we'll be able to really narrow it down. And I don't know how we're going to do that, because I guess that's why I'm here, to learn about AI and how we're going to implement that. But it feels like we're going to be able to use it somehow. And I feel like in cash forecasting and using all of the data we have to create a more accurate and cash forecast.
Last question, and it's okay if the answer to this is I don't know, but we're here in a dreamland, if you will. Everyone is pitching their thing and trying to come up with what the future will look like. What if you put the product hat on your head and you kind of wave your magic wand? What feature or solution or opportunity is there to improve your workflow?
I think, oh wow. Well, just more time in the day. No, I'm just kidding. So, yeah, we're really at the beginning of creating our actual treasury framework. So I don't know what would I want?
We'll check in next year then.
Yeah, better analysis of a way to analyze our numbers that's not doesn't take all sorts of time, I guess.
Yeah.
KPIs or looking at cash turns, just I'm not really sure what I want, but I know that as we get things set up, we're meeting in like a month or so to really narrow down what our expectations are for our overall view. So I feel like next year I'll have a better answer.
Awesome. Well, McKenzie, thank you so much for joining the show. Hope you enjoy the rest of your time at AFP and really appreciate your time.
Thank you. This was great.